All right. Thank you, Amy, and thank you, everybody, for coming. I wanted to just do without the PowerPoint because I want you to use your imagination a little while I talk. And they said they would put some, ocean images, but now I feel like you're just going to be mesmerized by the fish and not listen to me, but maybe that's okay. So I was tasked with answering the same question that the other two keynote speakers were talking about, which is, but with this little addendum, if we're creating a new blue economy, what should we do differently and why? And so it might be worth just defining blue economy. There's no kind of Webster's dictionary definition, but it's essentially all the economic activity that's associated with the ocean industry and coast, and that includes coastal real estate, coastal tourism, shipping, oil and gas, minerals, fishing, of course, and other things which we'll talk about. And so I have a research center here at the Middlebury Institute where we study this, and so I know a little bit about this, and so I'm going to break this conversation down into three parts. The first, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the why. Why do we need a new model for the blue economy? The second will be some of my ideas and thinking on this topic, and here's where maybe we can start using our imagination a little. And the third will be try to be practical, things that you can do at the community level to support and make this vision a reality. So the first part about the why is somewhat on the depressing side, and I don't want to really give you a litany of all the destruction of the ocean and et cetera, but I do want to make a few quick points. The first is there's people who are studying mass extinctions, the history of mass extinctions, which are defined as episodes in Earth's history where 75% or more of all species have gone extinct in a rapid time frame. And one of the markers of this, one of the kind of canaries in the coal mine, so to speak, is coral reefs start dying. And that tends to be the beginning domino of us that leads to a mass extinction. And obviously you know that we're already starting to enter that phase, and with ocean acidification we might accelerate that. So I guess my first point would be to the why. This is really existential. If the oceans die, we die. And it really is that simple. There is a direct line there. A couple other points I'd make, though, is with the oceans, unlike the land where we can really see a lot of the destruction, the oceans, we are still the out of sight, out of mind. And so most people suffer from what we call a shifting baselines mentality, which is we've all in modern life gotten so used to a degraded ocean that we don't even know what we're missing, and we don't even know how to measure progress in some absolute way. And I'll use Monterey Bay as an example of that. So Monterey Bay had a lot of success in the last couple decades, and it's been touted. There was the big BBC special, and it's this huge, we're actually applying to be a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and that's great, and I want to applaud the success. But actually, the Monterey Bay ecosystems are a shell of their former self. So if we could all be transported back in time 100 or 200 years, we would see so many whales out in the bay that you would get bored of watching them. There'd be so many thousands, tens of thousands of otters that they would become kind of like pests after a while. They wouldn't be these iconic, cute things that are coming back from the brink. We've wiped out most of the fish species. We've wiped out most of the abalone. So even a place like Monterey, which I think is being rightfully celebrated for kind of coming back, is really a shell of its former self. And even more depressing than that, there are a lot of natural scientists who I hang out with who say the reason Monterey Bay is getting so much stuff is because everything else is dying and everything's coming here as a refuge. It's not that this is actually in an absolute sense better. So with that being said, I know that's depressing, but it's good for us to step out and realize that most of us in the modern realm, we don't even know what healthy ecosystems look like anymore because we've never lived with them. And it's just something to ponder. And the final point, which is in line with the other two speakers, which is really nice to see, is that what I want to talk about in terms of a new blue economy is moving from an exploitative relationship with the oceans to a restorative or regenerative. And so we didn't plan that, but we all have the same language. Because really, if you think about it, all of our centuries, millennia relationship with the oceans, by and large, has been how much can we take out of it and how much can we dump into it. That's essentially been the logic. So we need to change that. I would also add that I don't think it's just an issue of sustainability, it's an issue of ethics. What we're doing to the oceans is unconscionable in my view, and so it's an ethical imperative, not just a survival, self-interest imperative. So I want to transition now out of the depressing to the second part, which is what should this new blue economy look like? And here's where I'd like you to use your imagination, aided by the mesmerizing blue scene you have here. And I want to just say up front, I don't have the answer to this, okay? So I'm just throwing out some ideas here and to spark some thinking, but I have a framework, a kind of a scaffolding, I think, of what a new blue economy would look like. And so the first thing is it's going to be, the coastlines are going to be used for renewable energy a lot more than they are now. And so the wind potential and the tidal potential of the oceans is really almost limitless in the sense of our finite needs. And so the new blue economy will be an economy with a lot of renewable energy in those offshore environments. It's also going to be very different from our experience because we're going to move back from the shoreline. So this whole let's get as close to the beach as possible, and that's the most expensive real estate, is not only bad because of, we know now, being in the path of hurricanes and stuff is not that great, but it's also because we've basically not allowing any of these coastal ecosystems to adapt, and we've really just built our infrastructure up to the edge. And so the new blue economy is going to be this kind of managed retreat, restoration of this shoreline area, and us all moving back a little. And so that's one element. It's also going to be a lot more sea vegetables instead of fish. So I'll talk about this in a moment. And by the way, all of these are some really great examples of this going on in Monterey Bay that I'm going to talk about. So just as a little note, if most of you, woke up and talk, and had, had your tiger fillet for breakfast and then your gorilla steak for lunch, you would get a lot of moral disapprobation from your fellow colleagues, and that would be because of the trophic importance of those species as well as the endangered status of the species. But that's the same thing of people eating bluefin tuna or swordfish. It's like eating a tiger or eating a lion or a giraffe or something, or a gorilla. And so the future of the blue economy is going to be a lot less fish, especially high trophic fish, and a lot more low trophic foods and sea vegetables. So that can be intensive, and I'll talk about some of that. And then it's also going to be a lot more blue technology and research and development in public-private partnerships with educational institutions and technology companies, and it's going to be biopharmaceuticals, it's going to be robotics, it's going to be all kinds of new plastics. We'll talk about the new plastics economy, right, in a second. So I just want to try to maybe pause here for a moment and say, if you take all of these things together and kind of go out a couple decades, you start seeing the outlines of what the new blue economy would look like. It's not detailed, but it's kind of your 10,000 foot view. And I think I'd like to now transition into how we can really make that happen, and fill in some more of the details. So the first thing is on that energy, coming back to the issue of renewable energy. Something that we all can do at the community level is what's called community choice energy. And we passed that law in Monterey and Santa Cruz just last year. And what this is communities voting to create their own energy systems. And then they can choose renewable energy targets that are higher than the public utilities. And interestingly, I literally got an email yesterday afternoon, because I was on the working group while they were voting for this stuff last year. I got an email saying that there were bills being put forth in the California state legislature that were threatening to undo the law that had just passed and to emergency call all your state assemblymen and women and the governor. And so I got that late last night when I got home, and so I haven't been able to look into this. But as you can imagine, every step forward, there's always a pushback from industry. And so, for those of you who are interested in your local here, we have to look into that and see if something that we democratically voted on is being withdrawn or tried to be pushed back. But this is a huge step, right? Communities saying, we're going to take control of the power grid. And we're not going to just accept the 20% target by 2020 or the 30% target by 2025. We're going 100% renewable. We're going 80% renewable. We're pushing the envelope. And so this, I think, is the first key step. And a lot of that will mean eventually, especially in big urban environments, offshore wind. And so I was going to wear this Windmill Farms t-shirt. It's a friend of mine's farm. And it's not like farms of windmills. It's actually Windmill Farms because he's Dutch. So it has like this nice idyllic windmill on it. And I think the reason I was going to wear it is because I want you to think of windmills as idyllic, as the kind of the nice old-fashioned one. Even though the modern ones for energy are 300 feet high and they're these massive industrial structures, it turns out that one of the reasons, especially in the United States, that they have not been promulgated as much is because people think they're an eyesore. And so you have wealthy communities with beachfront properties saying, we don't want wind farms off that are going to kill my view. And so part of this is perception, right? We have to change the perception that a windmill off the coast is some negative eyesore, right? I want you, next time you see a windmill, to think, that's awesome, wow, that looks beautiful. And because without dealing with climate change, the ocean acidifies, the ocean dies, and and ... right? So wind farms are our friends, and you should be, happy and blessed if you live in a coastal community that has a big offshore wind farm outside of it. So that's the first thing. The second, again, as I mentioned, is eating lower on the food chain, and this is not just sea, it's terrestrial. There was the slide earlier that the biggest kind of environmental degradation per unit of effort is basically eating industrial meat. But it's also at the seafood level, and there's some amazing stuff going on with sea vegetable production. So I want to give a big shout out to Mike Graham. He's at Moss Landing Marine Labs up the road here, and he is starting an aquaculture center and is developing California species-specific sea vegetable products that he's starting with selling to high-end restaurants, and he just gave me a bunch of samples yesterday, and it's incredible. He literally has this stuff that you pull it out of these big vats and you eat it, raw, and it's like the freshest, most vital, nutritious stuff you've ever seen. And in the summer months, it doubles every day. Right, this is the growth rates, right? So this is the type of stuff that really has potential. You can also make it into cosmetics, biofuels. Obviously, it's not like all your calories. You're going to have to still eat. You can't just live on sea vegetables, but this can replace a lot of seafood. And a lot of people eat fish because of the omega-3s. The omega-3s, just like cows don't get protein out of the air, they get it from the grass. The fish get the omega-3s from the sea vegetables and the plankton they eat. So the purest form of the omegas, which is the brain food that we all need, it comes from the plant sources. So this is the new blue economy. The new blue economy is going to be a lot less tuna and swordfish and a lot more ogo and dulse and nori. And this can be done really sustainably. It's high labor, so it's going to be a lot of really good jobs. And the big bottleneck here right now is more permitting for the stuff that's in the oceans. And so Mike is doing his land-based. But he says the potential is just huge in the oceans, but there's some permitting. So those of us in the policy realm, we have to make the economic and social case to our policymakers to free up some permitting to allow some experimentation with this, because this is the future. The next thing, again, I want to make a plea to all of you individually, which is I know it's the kind of a dream for many of us to live on the shoreline and to have that beach house. And maybe, although maybe I'm not sure how many of us can afford that here, but if you can, that's beautiful. But to say, that shouldn't be the aspiration. The aspiration should not be to live at the edge of the ocean. That should be nature. We need to move that back. And so we can be on the hill, up a little looking down, or we can be up the block and the path walking down. But we have to start supporting local initiatives, whether they're planning efforts and bond initiatives for this managed retreat. And it's going to be a much better world, right? When the ocean can reclaim that first half mile, and we build in the seagrasses and the marshes and the dunes. We get all that storm protection. We bring in the sea vegetables and the shellfish aquaculture. You can think it's going to be an incredibly rich, dynamic system. We can go down there to eat. We just won't have to live up right on the edge with the ocean view, right? That's the one little thing we might have to give up, but it's for a much greater gain. And then I want to mention, again, issues of kind of local educational, public-private partnerships. I want to give a big shout out to Daniela Russo, who is starting what's called the Samfar Innovation Center for the New Plastics Economy. And it's right up the road here at Cal State Monterey Bay. And she's starting it, so it's the land from a California State University and then a MacArthur grant to build a facility. And she's going to have an accelerator program for people who are looking for new businesses to replace plastics in the supply chain, right? So this is exactly the new blue economy, right? This is super high-tech innovation, public-private partnerships, entrepreneurship, getting young people, getting people from around the world, and starting to get out all that stuff from the supply chain that's destroying the oceans, right? So in some sense, Monterey is at least a little taste of what the new blue economy can look like, because we're already starting to make some moves in that direction. And I want to end with the last point about what you can do, is that all the local coastal ecotourism, from kayaking to whale watching to surfing to diving, this is the non-consumptive, non-extractive use of the oceans. This has a huge impact, and as someone who works with policymakers, when we show them the impact of those elements of the economy, they're much more willing to not sign up on the offshore oil drilling or on the extractive increasing fishing zones, because they go, wait up, the divers are going to be hurt, or the whale watchers are going to be hurt, and that's the economy that's growing and bigger than the extractive. And so the more you as individuals can really support that type of economy, you're making the case for the larger interest that kind of non-consumptive is really the true value of the oceans. So I want to just end there by saying that I hope I've given you a framework for how to think about this. I think the examples I gave, Mike Graham and Daniela Russo, are two great local heroes who you can look up, and feel free to check with me in the lobby if you want their contact information. And I think this new blue economy that we build will be something we can all be proud of. And maybe one day, maybe if it's not us, but maybe our children or our children's children, their baseline will be that new regenerative ocean where they're getting tired of seeing whales and tired of seeing otters. And that's a problem that I hope we have one day. So thank you.